What if the gods you've read about in ancient legends are not separate from you, but waiting quietly dormant within your very being? Imagine your soul as an untapped temple, its doors sealed by ages of forgotten rituals, guarded by the veils of ordinary thinking. Tonight, we do not simply discuss spirituality, we embark on a journey to unlock a secret the ancients hinted at, but few have ever truly realized, the secret of awakening your own divine essence. Throughout history, whispered across lost continents and hidden within the folds of sacred texts, runs a singular, electrifying idea, that human beings are not mere mortals, but vessels for the same creative force that shaped the heavens and the earth. Why then, do most of us go about life feeling powerless, small, and cut off from the miraculous? What did the ancient mystics know and practice that allowed them to glimpse the eternal flame within themselves? Tonight, I invite you to step into the mystery, not as a passive listener, but as a fellow seeker ready to peer behind the curtain of conventional reality. You will touch upon the forgotten wisdom of Egypt's sun priests, the mantra-charged heart of Vedic sages, the silent knowing of Gnostic initiates and, perhaps, recognize a thread that ties them all together. That becoming divine is not a title reserved for the chosen few, but a journey open to every soul brave enough to embark upon it. We'll explore legendary practices you can use today to invoke your inner godhood, and examine why this power was hidden away in riddles, symbols, and metaphors throughout the centuries. More importantly, we'll reveal practical rituals and mind-shifting exercises to reawaken the spark that ancient mystics guarded so jealously. Are you prepared to challenge everything you thought you knew about your own limits? To move beyond the illusion of separateness and awaken to the possibility that the divine is not found in distant heavens, but in the depths of your own consciousness? If so, let us begin. To trace the roots of awakening the inner God, we must step far beyond the familiar pageantry of temples and scripture. Let us slip silently among the shadowed halls of ancient wisdom, where the highest teachings were never spoken aloud, but only whispered from teacher to student under vows of secrecy. History, in its overt narrative, tells us much about kings and battles. Yet, in every mystical tradition, whether in the hieroglyphic silence of Egypt's House of Life, the moonlit groves of the Druids, or the remote mountain ashrams of India, there was an unbroken secret. The divine is not out there, but within. Consider the Egyptians. Their sun priests spoke of the Ba, the soul's ethereal double, a radiant essence that, when awakened, reveals a being indistinguishable from the gods themselves. Their temples were not only places of worship, but living laboratories of consciousness, where initiates underwent trials designed not just as tests of will, but as mirrors to the latent power within. The walls themselves, carved with enigmatic symbols, were maps for an interior voyage. Travel east to India, where the Upanishads, the esoteric heart of Vedic wisdom, declare, Tat Tvamaz, thou art that. The sage who wandered the forests in search of truth did not seek to appease distant deities, but to pierce the illusion of separation and realize the Atman, the divine self, hidden within the play of flesh and thought. Even in remote China, the Taoist adepts did not worship external gods, but sought immortality through internal alchemy, transforming the lead of mundane existence into the gold of spiritual awakening. The Tao, elusive and unnameable, was found in the space between breaths. Why then, if these truths are so universal, did they become buried beneath dogma and superstition? The reason is twofold. First, such power, awakened prematurely or without guidance, can unravel more than it heals. Ancient societies enshrined this wisdom within riddles and allegory to protect it from the unprepared. Second, as civilizations rose and fell, the focus of spiritual practice shifted from direct experience to ritual, from inner illumination to outer form. The sacred languages evolved into liturgies, their living wisdom ossified into doctrine. But beneath the layers of time and cultural translation, the core insight remains. The human being is a microcosm, a miniature echo of the cosmos itself. Echoes of this insight shimmer in the Emerald Tablet's mysterious axiom, as above, so below. The divine spark waits in the deep recesses of consciousness, clouded by forgetfulness, fear, and fragmentation. In our age so loud with distraction, so hungry for meaning, this wisdom seems more distant than ever, and yet, it remains, coded in myth, painted in the imagery of tarot cards, sung in forgotten mantras. Our ancestors believed it could only be reached by the worthy, but perhaps the time has come to remember, the journey inward was always open to all who dared to ask, "Who am I really?" Tonight, as you listen, let yourself feel the ancient melody beneath the words, the call to become what the mystics once saw not as a promise, but a birthright, the awakening of the inner God. To awaken the inner God is not to perform some grandiose act or to suddenly become omnipotent. No true awakening is subtler, stranger, more paradoxical than that. It is like remembering a forgotten melody that once belonged to you, like noticing, for the first time, a doorway that was always present, disguised as the ordinary. Let me tell you a story, one found in the golden dawn of mythology. Prometheus, the divine trickster, steals fire from the heavens not merely to give humans warmth, but to hand them the spark of the gods themselves. That fire is consciousness, a living, aware presence within each of us, hidden beneath layers of habit, fear, and inherited belief. The mystics of every tradition recognized this same fire and crafted their methods not to summon it from outside, but to remove what obscures it within. But what does it mean, practically, to awaken the inner God? Imagine your mind as a vast palace, with chambers unexplored, mirrors shrouded in dust, and gardens sealed by neglected gates. Most of us live in just one small, brightly lit room, our everyday awareness, while the rest lies in shadow. The inner God is not a being separate from you, but the fullness of your latent potential, creativity, wisdom, power, and, above all, a direct, unspeakable knowing that you are not merely in the universe but of it. To reach this space, the ancients left clues, some direct, many hidden. The Egyptians, for example, practiced the unveiling of the face, a ritual wherein the initiate gazes into complete darkness, using breath and intention to pierce the veil between ordinary thought and the divine inner presence. In the Upanishads, sages describe neti neti, the art of negation, not this, not that, shedding illusion after illusion, identity after identity, until what remains is the unnameable self, radiant, complete. Even in the West, the Gnostic Christians taught of gnosis, not faith, but experiential knowing. They spoke of Sophia, the divine wisdom, concealed within boldness and humility, accessible through inner silence rather than dogma. Their enemies called them heretics for suggesting that each soul could contain the spark of divinity without permission from priest or king. But the awakening is rarely tidy. It is a riddle. How do you realize your highest nature without the arrogance of separation or the self-annihilation of nihilism? The inner God is not an ego inflated to cosmic size, but the dissolution of the prison walls of ego, so that the larger self, what Jung would call the self-archetype, can step forward. Ask yourself, who is the I that observes your thoughts? When you meditate, who is watching the mind? When you dream, who dreams? This witnessing consciousness is like a hidden flame, larger than your memories, older than your name, and yet forever present. The first step, the mystics agree, is not to believe, but to become curious. To look at yourself, your choices, your reactions, as if you were a sacred mystery, one the world has overlooked for too long. But even curiosity alone is not enough. The fire must be nurtured and protected, the inner God awakened not in a moment, but in a process, layer by layer, day by day. What practices, what attitudes, unlock the doors to this palace, and what shadows guard the threshold, waiting to be faced? For now, the answer hovers in the air, unanswered, a magnetic tension, calling you inward. To venture further into the labyrinth of awakening is to confront the paradoxes that both dazzle and confound the seeker. If you are, even now, a spark of the divine, why does it feel so easy to forget? Why does the world, in all its noise and distraction, seem designed to lull us into sleep rather than stir us into wakefulness? Let's peer into the heart of this riddle, one that has woven its shadow into the mysteries of every spiritual path. Ancient alchemists, robed in secrecy, spoke of solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine, break down illusion, then remember anew what you truly are. They knew that the journey of awakening is not a single upward ascent, but a spiral. Each revolution brings you closer and yet reveals deeper shadows demanding attention, old wounds cloaked in new masks. Consider the paradoxes at play. The self that seeks awakening is not the self that awakens. The harder you chase divinity through force or ego, the further it slips from your grasp. The Tao Te Ching whispers, "He who knows does not speak, he who speaks does not know." The true divine spark emerges not from frantic striving, but from surrender, a conscious letting go that often feels like stepping off a precipice into infinite possibility. And here lies a dangerous myth, that awakening is about acquiring superhuman powers, escaping suffering, or becoming superior. In fact, the oldest teachings warn against this temptation. In the Hermetic texts, Hermes Trismegistus cautions against spiritual pride, likening it to a false light that entraps the soul. The real awakening renders you more fully human, not less. It is not about feeling above others, but realizing your undivided kinship with all creation. There are stories rare, unsettling of seekers who open doors too quickly, unprepared for the sudden flood of insight that strips away the stories we cling to for comfort. The mystics call this the dark night of the soul, a passage where the old self dissolves, leaving the seeker raw, luminous, reborn. In some traditions, the guardians at the threshold appear as internal fears, overwhelming doubts, or the seductive voices of illusion. These are not punishments, but initiations necessary to test the resolve and humility of any would-be god. Great sages, from Lao Tzu to Rumi, recognized another secret, that the ultimate wisdom is found not in grand revelations, but in unassuming silence. The awakened soul is one who can act in the world with compassion and clarity, guided by an inner presence that is both deeply personal and utterly universal. Here is a little-known insight. Many ancient rituals, whether chanting the names of forgotten gods, gazing into sacred fires, or walking the spiral labyrinths etched into cathedral floors, were designed not to attract external miracles, but to synchronize the initiate's internal rhythms with the pulse of the cosmos. These rituals served as bridges, reuniting the fragmented self with the great pattern of being. And yet, for all these teachings, the ultimate journey remains uniquely yours. No teacher, no book, no ancient script can awaken the God within you, only your willingness to step beyond inherited beliefs, to endure uncertainty, and to trust the still, small voice that has whispered your true name since the dawn of your existence. As we prepare to ground these mysteries with practical exercises, remember, the path of awakening is not a fortress to be stormed, nor a puzzle to be solved. It is a slow unveiling, a steady remembrance. The riddle persists, echoing through your dreams and moments of wonder. Are you ready to reclaim the sacred fire? Now we arrive at the crossroads where theory meets experience, and ancient whispers become living breath in your own life. Behind every mystical tradition lies a constellation of practices, disciplines designed not to complicate, but to gently clear away the veils that dim your inner radiance. These are not spells for instant transcendence, but portals, small, sacred actions steadily aligning you with the divine spark within. Let us begin, as the initiates once did, with the breath. The Egyptian priests called it the wind of life, the subtle river connecting mortal and divine. Find a quiet space and sit comfortably. Relax your shoulders and bring your mind's attention to your breath. With each inhalation, imagine drawing golden light from the very heart of the cosmos, filling your lungs and spiraling upward through your spine. As you exhale, release heaviness, old thoughts and patterns back to the earth. Practice this for just 5 minutes a day, and you'll sense the doorways of perception begin to loosen. The mystics of the Upanishads taught the art of self-inquiry. As thoughts arise, ask softly, who is aware of this? Follow each thought not to its content, but to the silent awareness at its root. This discipline, practiced daily, is like polishing a neglected mirror. Soon, what reflects back to you is not a small self, frail and fleeting, but the vastness brilliant and eternal behind the eyes. Ancient Gnostics practiced inner affirmation, silently reciting, I am light, I am wisdom, I am love. Not vanity, but recognition. Small sparks that, repeated with sincerity, ignite the flame within. Let these words settle into your consciousness each morning, and notice the subtle magnetism with which your reality begins to shift. Another potent ritual: spend moments throughout your day in conscious presence. When you eat, taste the food as if for the first time. When you walk, feel the earth beneath your feet, the pulse of the world moving through you. The Greeks called this entheos, to be filled with the Spirit. Ordinary tasks, performed with mindful reverence, reveal themselves as acts of divinity disguised as routine. Of course, this path is not without obstacles. You may encounter resistance, a sleepy skepticism, a voice saying, "Who am I to seek the divine?" Recognize such doubts as guardians of the threshold, not enemies but signatures that you are close to something vital. When you stumble, remember, the journey inward is not a race, but a spiral. Each day's practice, no matter how small, is an act of revolution. And beware of the subtle trap of ego inflation. As your awareness grows, channel humility. The awakened inner God is not for aggrandizement, but for service. The measure of true awakening is not powers or visions, but peace, wisdom, and compassion extended quietly into the world around you. If frustration arises, return to your breath. Return to the silent question, who am I? Seek not answers, but presence. In time, the layers will part and what was hidden will quietly greet you, as if returning home. Carry these first steps not as burdens, but as lanterns for your journey. The rituals are simple, the commitment, profound. For those who walk this path with sincerity, ancient wisdom assures, knock, and the door shall be opened. You have walked with me tonight through shadowed temples and sunlit whispers, deciphering riddles older than spoken language, and standing at the threshold of your own forgotten magnificence. If the gods did leave a hidden message for humanity, perhaps it was this: divinity is not to be worshipped afar, but kindled within the greatest altar is your very soul. The ancient mystics, in their veiled wisdom, never promised power without challenge, nor ecstasy without doubt. Awakening your inner God is not a lightning bolt striking from the heavens, but a gradual dawn, the gentle lifting of a veil after lifetimes of dreaming. Each breath, each question, each act of conscious presence fans the sacred flame a little brighter. The world may urge you back into sleep, into noise and forgetfulness, but a part of you, now awakened by memory older than your bones, will always yearn for that deeper sense of belonging. When you sit in silence, when you ask sincerely, who am I? Listen closely. Sometimes, the answer comes not as a sound, but a rippling hush, a sense of unshakable peace blooming in your chest. That is the echo of your true nature stirring. Remember, this journey is not about escaping the ordinariness of life, but transforming it. The coffee cup, the rain, even the rise and fall of your daily trials all are invitations to find the miraculous in the mundane. As you nurture the practices from tonight's exploration, know that each small act of inner attention bridges the space between myth and reality, between human and divine. So I ask you now, a question once etched in secret glyphs and whispered around midnight fires. Are you willing to persist, to question, and to dare the journey inward, even when it means letting go of everything you thought you were? If your answer is yes, then perhaps you've already heard the call. The first step is always the hardest, and, paradoxically, the simplest. Begin. If you felt the spark tonight, share your thoughts in the comments below. What truths resonated? What questions still burn brightest for you? Like and subscribe for more journeys into the mysterious and the miraculous. The temple is always open, and the adventure has only just begun. Until next time, remember, the God within you is not waiting for permission, only your presence.